maracatu. Hoje a tecnologia está muito avançada. Hoje a tecnologia está muito avançada. Quem faz o meio ambiente, nossa voz está ameaçada. Para me apresentar aqui, a Jesus pedi ajuda. Para me apresentar aqui, a Jesus pedi ajuda. Bate palma, pessoal, que Nazaré tem saúde. Recife é a terra do frevo, ninguém quebra esse tabu. Recife é a terra do frevo, ninguém perde esse tabu. Sou de Nazaré da Mata, terra do maracatu. não é só para os heróis, é dever de todos nós, de prefeito a presidente, plante mais uma semente, cuide dela que ela cresce. Aqui vai sua semente, considera que você ensina quem não conhece, seja limpo e não se queixe, faça a sua parte, deixe que a natureza agradece. Preconceito é uma ameaça para nossa cidadania. Queremos uma democracia onde o racismo não passa, uma mistura de raça numa perfeita união. Uma mistura de raça numa perfeita união. Cidadã e cidadão com igualdade de registro, que o negro seja visto do jeito que os brancos são. Não fiz o vestibular, nem cursei a faculdade. A minha universidade só me ensinou a cantar. E a cultura popular, ela quem me deu o troféu. E a cultura popular, ela quem me deu o troféu. Meu professor tá no céu, me corrige e dá provo. O meu diploma é o povo, vale mais do que papel. Seria bom que a gente tivesse o poder profundo de poder consertar o mundo, fazer tudo diferente, ver Jesus em nossa frente toda hora que pedir. Jesus em nossa frente toda hora que pedir. Mas o poder de subir é de Deus e não é nosso. Quero ir pro céu e não posso, Deus querendo vem aqui. Morreu João Paulo I, o segundo também se foi. Morreu o 1 e o 2, eu sou João Paulo III. Não sou papa verdadeiro, porque não sou cardeal. Não sou papa verdadeiro, porque não sou cardeal. Não sou líder pastoral, mas meu nome está na fileira. Sou papa de brincadeira do Maracatura. Hoje é rede social, tem bagagem que permite. O WhatsApp, o Twitter, o YouTube é o principal. O e-mail corre em geral, o Tinder é calimã. O e-mail corre em geral, o Tinder do Facebook eu sou fã. Meu celular hoje eu loto, com filho de mensagem de foto postada no Instagram. corajoso. Pessoal, eu sou muito corajoso. Tudo em mim é vantajoso. Faço coisa que admira. Nunca disse uma mentira, que eu detesto o mentiroso. Brinquei com a morte, disse a ela que eu não morro. Brinquei com a morte, disse a ela que eu não morro. Ela me pediu socorro, quando apertei sua goela, dei 4 palmadas nela, porque matou meu cachorro. Tenho remédio feito do pó do granito. Tenho remédio feito do pó do granito. Do São José do Egito eu trouxe outra mistura. Remédio bom pra feiura e quem é feio fica bonito. Podem tomar que o remédio não é ruim. Joga no mato, o remédio não é. Eu tomei, fiquei assim, eu era muito esquisito. E quem quiser ficar bonito, só basta olhar pra mim.
Sorry. Okay, now, hello everyone. Bom dia em português. Sejam bem-vindos. Welcome to the Pernambuco Seminar on Visualization and Sustainability. It's a pleasure to be here with you today because this is a dream that came true. This event it was idealized by me and Ivan, but it wouldn't happen if we didn't have like a large stuff and lots of people involved to make this happen. So I'm really glad and I'm really I don't know. I'm really happy to be here for this event. And to start, I would like to invite Nivan, my partner, uh, my colleague, to be here to introduce you the event. Right?
Okay,
Thank you, Nivan.
thank you, Gusto. And again, welcome to Recife. Welcome uh, to our home, second home, right? The university. So, for those of you that are not from here, we would like to welcome you to the city, and hopefully, you're gonna enjoy much of these beautiful places that we have here. And we also want to welcome you to this to the Centro de Informática. Uh, we have, like as Gusto said, a dream come true of having like an event like this here, and we're very happy to it is happening. Just to contextualize a bit, we are kind of a big center, like around 95 faculty, 300 researchers working as like graduate students and staff, 60 staff members, more than 2,500 students, and we are one of the best institutions of computing and technology in Latin America. We strive for excellence here, and one of our let's say marks there is that we are one of the top 8 programs in Brazil, which Brazil is a big country, so you would imagine that it's a very nice achievement, and especially we are the only one here in the northeast, north and northeast of Brazil. Um, we also love to collaborate with industry and private partners. So we have a bunch of collaborations with local and global companies, and also we value research a lot. So we contribute with researchers from all around the world. We also need to like doing more of these, maybe Africa and so on. But again, we collaborate with a bunch of the world here, and we now wanted to, again, one of our missions is to increase our international presence, and this event is one of the initiatives that we have towards this goal, right? So, and now pass to Gusto so he can talk a bit more about what is the Pernambuco Seminar and what we are trying to achieve here.
Thanks, Nivan. So, what is a Pernambuco seminar or Pernambuco seminar with our accent, right? Uh, this is an idea that we had because uh, we are used to getting in touch with people from all over the world. We have like our colleagues here from different countries, and something that is missing from us is like we need a very impactful event happening in the global south. So this is the premise of this event. It's like let's create not just an event, but an impactful event that will happen in the global south. And it's not just one event, one single event. It's a series of events. So Pernambuco seminars will start with the Pernambuco seminar on visualization and sustainability, but I hope that it can continue and we can have like other Pernambuco seminars. Like I heard that we will also have like a Pernambuco seminar on quantum computing soon. So perhaps I will finally learn what a quantum computing is, right? So this is our dream of having like a seminar happening here in Brazil. Uh, and our inspiration was like other seminars that happen in other places in the world. So we have, for example, a Dagshu seminar that happens in Germany. That's where I met Sarah and Yorhia. They are here. And we also have, like, for example, the Banff in Canada, and we also have the Shonan in Japan. But we want to have a seminar, a similar seminar in Brazil. We want it to continue. We want it to flourish. And our goal is like bringing high level discussion on computer science to a global South country. This is our premise. But we also have like some beliefs, right? So what are these beliefs, Gusto? So for a Pernambuco seminar to be like successful, at least for us, it should be, for example, diverse. So we usually have like those seminars, those scientific seminars, and those are great seminars. But usually you only have like a bunch of academics from prestigious universities or like privileged people. And we want it to be different here. We wanted to have like people from different colors, with different uh, like touches. We want different people with different backgrounds. So that's why you're here. This is an open seminar because everyone should have access to knowledge produced in the seminar. So we don't want to be like in closed doors with our knowledge. We want it to be spread out to the world, right? And we also want to have like a sustainable event because climate change is real. Climate change is happening right now, and this is one of the reasons that we conceived this seminar of visualization and sustainability. So we want to make all our seminars as sustainable as possible, right? And we also want to have like a fun seminar. You saw like the Maracatu group performing like beautifully outside. And this is just like a glimpse of what we have and what we want you to experience during our seminars. We want it to be fun. We want you to connect with each other. So let's hope. And we want more. We don't know what to expect. The seminar is just like a trial, and you can also contribute to the seminar, give your suggestions so that we can improve it more and more, right? And then we have like the PSVS, which is the Pernambuco Seminar on Visualization and Sustainability, which, as I said, it was like a dream of me and Ivan, and I'm really glad. I'm really happy. I'm happy to welcome people from other countries that I know for a while. And when you like organize an event, sometimes you do it because you want to meet people again. But I'm also very happy to meet new people or new faces here, and this is amazing. So what's the Pernambuco seminar? What are the goals of this seminar? We got like four goals, let's say. The first one, we wanted to promote dialogues on two axes. The first one, we wanted to understand how data visualization can promote sustainability. So how can we use technology to make the planet a better place and a more livable place and a place that respects the environment? And the other one is how to develop sustainable practices in the visualization community or in the visualization field. So this goal is like, okay, we're trying to improve, but how can we improve more? And we expect from you, like, you're from different backgrounds, you're here to help us tackling this problem, right? Secondly, we want to cultivate this diverse community of researchers, activists, entrepreneurs, and policymakers, because this event is a scientific event, but it's also like composed of different flavors, as I said. So we have activists. We have, for example, in our keynotes, we have Bruno Albuquerque, which is an activist in sustainability. We have an entrepreneur also giving a keynote, Mariana Amazonas, which is from Roda, a company from Recife, which does like a circular economy. So this is amazing. Those are just some examples of how this event try to gather those persons with different backgrounds and to incorporate more to the event. We also wanted to position the Center of Informatics as a prominent hub in the Global South for pioneering discussions on sustainable computing. This is my research field. If you want to be a master student, this is my advertisement here. So we're trying to understand more what sustainable computing is, what can we do. And we also wanted to propose impactful projects at the intersection of computer science and sustainability. So if you sign up as an expert, I hope you can help us making this happen. So, as I said, participation formats. So you register for the event, and now we have like two different publics. We have the general public, which are those persons who registered for attending the keynotes and on Monday and Tuesday. So those are persons like who are curious about the field and want to learn more about it. And we also have like those experts, participants who want to have like the full experience of this event and will attend the event hopefully during the whole week. And we're gonna have like workshops. We're gonna have like group discussions. So I'm looking forward to have you here with us. And then here we have like some numbers. So I'm really glad that we had like 139 participants registered for the event. 50 of them are remote. And this is amazing too, because most of the a bunch of remote participants are people from other countries, especially from Europe and the United States, and they chose not to come because they are aware of the carbon impact that it could cause. So we do have like some people who came, but we were worried about it. So we have people from 6 different countries, and we also have like different levels of educations and backgrounds, as I stressed. So we have like 41% of researchers, 30% of undergraduate students, and 24% of activists, entrepreneurs, policymakers, developers, and so on. This is like an overview of our program. You're gonna take a look at it during the whole week, right? But just for you to have an overview. And then let me talk about like this program in more detail. So the keynotes and the panel today and tomorrow. So today we're gonna have like the keynotes and the panel discussions. Everything will happen here in the amphitheater, and it's broadcast on YouTube on the Center of Informatics channel on the YouTube. We're gonna have like Q&A sessions. So for those sessions, questions can be asked either on Discord channels, like we have specific channels for each keynote and for the panel. So you can ask questions there. But if you are in person, you can also raise your hand, and I can like put you in a queue, and we can also have you asking questions. So the workshops will happen on Tuesday and Thursday. No, on Tuesday and Wednesday. But the workshops will only happen in person with Sarah Hayes and Yorhia Panaria to do. And I'm sure the workshops will be amazing. So if you are in person uh, and you registered as an expert, participate in the workshops. So we're gonna have like hands-on activities, and we're gonna analyze data related to climate change and sustainability. And I heard that most of the data is from Pernambuco and from Recife, so they struggle a lot to go to the websites, the the state website related to the data, and also the Recife one. But we have the data, and we want to make the workshops as accessible as much for the participants. So if you don't have like a computer science background, go to the workshops anyway, because we're gonna make it happen, right? Okay, and we also have the hybrid groups discussion, which is gonna be very enriching, because as in other traditional seminars, we have this moment where people gather, and then they form groups and they discuss about like some important issues and come up with solutions for those issues. And here I expect that this will be awesome, because we will have people, like very diverse people. So I expect to have like really nice things, really nice outcomes. So here we have like we have some expected outcomes, like research project proposals, apps, platforms, or public interventions, law propositions. But don't be restricted by those, right? Try to be very imaginative, very open, and propose whatever you wish. So the workshops will, the hybrid groups discussion will happen on Thursday and Friday for the expert participants. And now I'll leave. I'll wait a little bit for you to scan the QR code if you haven't seen the program yet. The program is also available on the website, psvs.cin.ufpe.br, which is the official website of our event. You can also use this short link to access the program. So everything related to the program, the time, the schedule, and who's gonna present, everything, the bio of the people, everything is there. Okay, but as I said, this is a seminar about data visualization, but also sustainability. So we tried as much as we could to be sustainable. I know that we're not carbon neutral. I don't expect it, but we made as much as possible to have like activities related to sustainability in this event. First of all, we have a hybrid event, right? We have this opportunity for people from different countries to attend the event without having to come here. So this will reduce travel emissions, and we also minimizing resource use with this. Besides that, this is really interesting. Have you seen your data badges? Aren't those like beautiful? So I would like to thank the student volunteers, Yasmin, Emily, because it was a lot of work. You can't imagine, but we try to have badges completely designed to be sustainable since day one. We use like found materials. As you can see, those are seeds from that we collected here at the university. We also try to use like reused cardboard. So everything that you can see in your badge, we try to be as sustainable as possible. Uh, we also have like the eco kit that Nivan took care. And we have this amazing eco kit. So we bought it from local producers. We also try to use eco-friendly materials, and we're encouraging you to avoid waste. During the registration, we asked you if you wanted the kit. and you could opt for not having the kit if you didn't want to. And we also have the cup, the reusable cup. So we expect not having like plastic cups here. So please use your cups to drink water. We have available water in the university. Or if you opt out for the kit, please bring your water bottle tomorrow. We also have like the exhibition of local producers. I don't know if you've seen when you were registering, but we have like local producers. We have, I think, I don't know, Maria can correct me, but we have like 10 to 12 local producers expected to be here. So they're very excited because this is good for their small economy. So take your time, go there, and maybe buy some stuff from local people. Some of the stuff is like handmade. So this is amazing. We also have like a moment to welcome new trees at the Center of Informatics. We're gonna have 4 tree saplings planted tomorrow morning. And we'll also have some tree seedlings to be distributed. So if you love plants, be prepared to get one of those tomorrow, okay? I'm taking too long, but now I'll just thank each and every one that contributed to this event happen. I don't know how to thank you. Those are just some faces that contributed to this event, but there are so many other faces that are not here. Some of them didn't send me their pictures on the mail, but also there are some other hidden faces that are contributing during the event. So, for example, Calegario and João worked out to make the Maracatu group happening right now. And there's the infrastructure people. There's, I don't know, lots of people. So I would like to give them a round of applause, please. Thank you so much, especially the student volunteers. You are amazing, guys. You are making this event happen. And then I would also like to thank the Center of Informatics and FACEP, which are our funding agency. Uh, they provided some monetary support for us to make this event happen and make it free, right? So a round of applause. So if you're not on Discord yet, please do go to Discord. You also have like the short link here, but go to Discord because this is our main platform for communication. Everything is there. The student volunteers are amazing. They're like eager to speak to people and to support people there, right? And also, I would like to ask you. Oh, sorry. To share your experiences during the week. Either on Discord, we have like a specific channel where you can post your pictures. You can, I don't know, send messages. You can put everything there. You at PSVS 24, and we also want you to post things on social media with the hashtag PSVS 24. With that said, thank you very much, people, and I hope you enjoy the event. Now we're gonna have some pause to introduce Frédérique. So to continue, now we're gonna have like our first presentation. The presentation is entitled Text, Text Diversity, Sustainability, and Inclusion Gap. And it will be presented by Frédérique Krupa. And let me describe her in a few words, like in 20, I don't know, just a few sentences. So Dr. Frédérique Krupa, I don't know if the accent is correct, but is the director of the Digital Design Lab at l'École de Design Nantes Atlantique and a UX designer and research methodology specialist. In parallel to her design career at Virtuals, Dassault Systems, and Simple is Beautiful, she has been a professor at prestigious design schools such as Parsons Schools of Design, RISD, University of the Arts, ASAD, and Paris College of Art, where she founded and chaired the Masters and Masters of Fine Arts in Transdisciplinary New Media. She completed her doctorate in design at the Université Paris Panthéon Sorbonne with her dissertation, Girls, Games, Gender, Design, and Technology in the Service of Women's Recruitment in ICT, followed by postdoc action research in peer-to-peer ICT pedagogy at the faculty-free and highly competitive Computer Science School 42, specializing in machine learning algorithms and AI ethics. Her current research focuses on establishing ML UX design methods, a holistic transdisciplinary and systematic approach to create fair, accountable, and transparent machine learning data, algorithms, and predicted models. With no further ado, please welcome Frédérique Krupa, our first presenter.
It's on. Okay. So, bom dia. So my name is Frédérique Krupa. So I basically read off pretty much my bio on the website. I would say the only thing that wasn't in that is that I'm also the co-founder and scientific director of the Interdisciplinary Innovation Platform for AI and Acceptability. So I do a lot of research right now on how technology is entering our workplaces and the way that it's impacting workers. And so this talk is actually the first time that I'm going to be linking the work of my PhD, which is really about the lack of diversity in the people who are making our tools, our software tools in particular, and the problems that we have with things like bias, and how this is actually coming into the field of machine learning and the problems associated with data in particular. So I'm going to try to do all of this in 45 minutes, so bear with me. I'm going to hopefully stay on time. So I'm going to reset the timer here so I do have an idea of how long I've been talking. Okay, so in my PhD, I was actually looking at the lack of women that are working in software development and why this was. I had been working at Virtuals for about 20 years already. I'd been working in software development, and it never occurred to me to ask the question, why am I the only woman in the room? And what is it that is actually keeping women from coming into this field, which is actually a lot of fun, has tremendous potential, tremendous impact on people. And it didn't actually occur to me to ask this question until really pretty late. And so when I started my research, I actually worked on my PhD for about 6 years. I was working at the time, so I wasn't a full-time PhD student. And I started uncovering some really pretty disturbing patterns. And because I was new to gender theory, I went through pretty much every single false lead that is currently being hashed out as the reason that women are not in computer science or in math or in whatever technological discipline. And I went through probably, my PhD has 1,300 papers that are listed in there. And I would say about 300 of them are examples of scientific research that tries to find reasons why women aren't in tech, which generally have excruciatingly faulty methodology. So basically, I spent a tremendous amount of time looking at these kind of wild goose chases. But in essence, the question we need to ask ourselves is, why is this discipline so homogeneous? These are statistics from the largest GAFAMs, primarily in North America, primarily American to be more specific. And we see that there is very little gender diversity or ethnic diversity in the people who are actually making our tools. In other words, what we're seeing is that these tools are essentially being, for the most part, conceived in the global north, and to be even more specific, primarily in Anglo-Saxon countries, and being disseminated to the rest of the world. And so because I was looking at this primarily through the prism of video game development as a field that was a little bit easier to contend with, I also started looking at statistics of where the women are at when they are working in the tech fields. And so you start looking at a lot of research that kind of identifies women going more into the service roles in IT rather than in the more prestigious ones. I also came across this PhD research from Isabelle Collet. And one of the things that she found in her PhD research in 2005 was that it wasn't that there were fewer women going into software development. It was simply that there were a lot more men going in. So the question is, why are so many more men going into software development now than before? And what we see on the other side are examples of the percentages of women that are entering technical fields, and we see that pretty much every single one shows an increase in female presence, except for computer science, which decreases starting in 1985. I hear the sound cutting off. So in my PhD, I basically explain how computer science is essentially one of the key industries that in the 21st century, and it's basically a field where there is a tremendous amount of money. If you actually look at who are the biggest, who are the richest people, basically, 5 out of the 10 are basically making their money primarily from software. And even if you think people like Apple are primarily hardware, no, it's actually the Apple Store and the money that they're making from the software that is primarily driving their growth. So technology is essentially, it's really a question of power. Who basically controls this field? Who is around the table defining the problems that are going to be answered? And because of this, we do need to ask ourselves, how do we actually bring diversity into this particular field? So, part of this is really also going back and seeing what happened to the field starting in the 1940s. So this is an image of the ENIAC. And you actually see that gender dynamics are going to remain in operation pretty much from the beginning of the history of computer science. Most of the women mathematicians were essentially being paid janitorial wages. Cleaning ladies and female mathematicians were essentially on the same pay scale. So a lot of the early computer science labs really enjoyed having a lot of women mathematicians because they were so much cheaper than the men. What we also see over this period of time is a growing prestige of computer science and software development in particular. So in the 1940s, all of the prestige and glamour was in the designing of the machines. It was the hardware that was prestigious. And this is where you would see all of the men essentially leading the labs. And the women were doing computer science, which at that point was essentially considered drudge work. And you see, even in the 60s and 70s, advertisements trying to convince women that this is not unlike being a secretary, because you've got access to keyboards, and that this is going to be a field that is going to be interesting for them. So you actually see active female recruitment in the 60s and 70s, and starting in the 80s, when the internet is going to essentially get its start, when video games console like the Nintendo NES and personal computers are going to start to be manufactured and sold and inserted into homes, you see a shift away from this very gender neutral approach to technology to one that is going to be masculinizing all of this. Even early, video games that were puzzle games somehow turn into like macho excitement advertisements. So if you want to see more about this, there's a lot more details in my PhD. It is written in English and it is available publicly. Did I turn it? No, okay. I should probably turn that. Okay. So first of all, why would we want to have diversity in our companies? So part of this is, as I mentioned, really about power. Who is being represented? Whose problems are being answered? Because if you are, a bunch of, privileged white males in California who are, kind of dictating what the next big software break is going to be, you're automatically bring your biases to the table. And this is part of what this talk is really about. Science is not a neutral activity. And because of this, we also have to ask ourselves, how can we actually encourage diversity? And part of this is about recognizing what diversity actually brings. Being a diverse group is not necessarily a given as being something that is beneficial. It is not an ethical thing about doing something that's right. There is actually a reason companies would want to have diverse workforce. So I'm actually just going to read this. So decades of research by organizational scientists, psychologists, sociologists, economists, and demographers show that socially diverse groups, that is those with a diversity of race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientation, are more innovative than homogeneous groups. It seems obvious that a group of people with diverse individual expertise would be better than a homogeneous group at solving complex non-routine problems. It's less obvious that socially diversity should work in the same way, yet the science shows that it does. This is not only because people with different backgrounds bring new information. Simply interacting with individuals who are different forces group members to prepare better, to anticipate alternative viewpoints, and to expect that reaching a consensus will take effort. In other words, diversity in our workforces make us less intellectually lazy. I'll let that sink in. So what are the challenges? Well, on a homogeneous team, people readily understand each other and collaboration flows smoothly, giving the sensation of progress. Dealing with outsiders causes friction, which feels counterproductive. In fact, working on diverse teams produces better outcomes precisely because it's harder. Diversity initiatives may not be successful until we do more to address the way that diversity is perceived. When leaders see it first and foremost as a social obligation that makes things difficult and slows progress, they will likely make decisions that undermine the organization's diversity goals. They may also, at least unconsciously, try to downplay the substance of existing diversity on their teams. If, however, leaders can recognize the debate and unfamiliarity that comes with diversity is an important catalyst for creativity and deep thinking, they will invite it and celebrate it. In other words, it is a very counterintuitive notion. And I say this because I actually, my former husband actually works in a GAFM, and I was privy to a lot of the insider discussion who got to join the team and why. And they actually did a culture fit hire, as one would say, somebody who actually works, in the field. They got along well. They were the same age, and he was, quite frankly, a very mediocre programmer. Quite, low production, And this is somebody who basically was able to jump from one GAFAM to another, doing, quite frankly, mediocre work simply because he kind of fit in to the general culture. And so I kept asking, well, why aren't you hiring women? Because I knew that there was a female PhD that had been that had actually been applying. And it was rare in this team, which was kind of low-level programming, for women to actually be applying. And they kept finding, oh, she's too academic. She isn't enough in the industry. But anyways, they finally hired her after 2 years. And she's a very, very good programmer. But all of this poses the question, how much do we need diversity in a team for it to actually be beneficial? As someone who was frequently the only woman in the room, you learn to pick your battles. Rosabeth Cantor, who in her research in 2008, reported that workers from minority social groups experience what's called tokenism when their social group represents less than 15% of employees. In other words, you need diversity, and you need enough diversity for the people not to feel threatened. Okay, so it's not necessarily very obvious that this is something that is desirable, because it actually does potentially create more friction in the workplace, but it will create better outcomes. And this has been tested, and you are welcome to get the references to look at the results. And it was actually done on mathematical problems, a lot of these research. So technology is not neutral. Okay. Technology is a social construct. It's by people around the table defining what problems will have financing, what problems merit being resolved. Essentially, the allocation of funds and resources is determined by humans. Technology is shared, organized, constructed as a social process. So what does this mean? Well, if it's human, basically, we're all going to be bringing our biases to the table, whether we think we are or not. Everybody is biased. Okay. So I'm going to do a little derivation here on why we are all biased. Well, basically, cognitive biases are survival mechanisms for our brain. We need them to be able to identify a whole series of problems. And I'll talk about when those biases tend to come into play. But essentially, we need to lighten our cognitive processes as much as possible, which means that we're going to be using these biases to make decisions rather than actually thinking them through. It lightens our cognitive workloads. So, identifying them is actually quite difficult, but you really have to understand that you cannot de-bias technology. You cannot de-bias machine learning. It is simply impossible. You can go tweak algorithms, you can try to do things mathematically, but you're just probably going to offset the problem to another group. So this idea of cognitive biases being something that we actually rely on to function, so that we can reserve our brains for the difficult tasks that require rational thinking, is something that we actually call upon. So this is actually from Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. This is the Cognitive Bias Codex. I think it's actually really particularly interesting. You should be able to find it on Wikipedia, actually, of all places. There's about 180 different cognitive biases that have been identified. It explains when we tend to trigger them. But what we need to understand is that there are 4 primary moments when we're going to put them into play. First of all, when there's too much information, how do we sort through too much information to reduce this? Okay. When there's not enough information, how do we make links? How can we make deductions based on what we're seeing? So we're going to trigger them as well at that particular moment. When we need to act fast, how do we identify danger? Okay, so this is really not an automatic response. And the last one is, what should we remember? When we are in a particular situation, we're actually going to be using these cognitive biases to decide the information that is salient, that we need to try to memorize, okay? Which is why there is so many problems in court cases, for example, when we're describing events that happened. It is something that is actually quite easy to manipulate. So all of this is, and I actually have more theories in pragmatic semiotics that also show how biases come into our ways of thinking and identifying information. But I will stop there because we have more stuff to cover. So artificial intelligence. So bear with me for those ML masters that are in the room. I am doing this so that it's understandable for everybody else. What are we talking about when we're talking about artificial intelligence? Basically, we could also call it collective intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, but really it's cognitive automation. And this is a field that actually predates machine learning. And I have a quote from François Chollet, who's actually working at Google in the TensorFlow group. And he really talks about what is intelligence and what isn't. So, but basically, intelligence is the adaptation to unknown unknowns across an unknown range of tasks and domains. Automation is at best robustly handling known unknowns over known tasks, which is already incredibly difficult and resource intensive in the real world, whether engineering or data. So when I'm going to be talking about AI, most of the time people use AI as a shortcut to talk about machine learning. I'm going to try to use the term predictive model, which I actually prefer to machine learning because it kind of it deflates the magic. You know, if you're actually talking about a predictive model, it becomes less magic than something that you know, sounds like it's looking out for you. And in my definitions, deep learning, and which is also neural networks, is a subset of machine learning. So machine learning has been around pretty much since the 1950s. That's when it first started in 1956. The first neural networks, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But essentially what we need to understand, it's a world that has different branches, different approaches. A lot of this information and these predictive models have already entered our tools, our social networks. They're the recommender systems that define what content you're going to see on TikTok or Instagram. It's being used to identify you in groups for recommender systems. It's doing the weather predictions. It's doing you know, a lot of the classification and regression predictions. It's also a field of reinforcement learning where you have your game AIs, your robot wayfinding, and things like that occurs. So it's a very large. It's a very large field. There's a lot of crossovers, and a lot of this technology is already influencing the way that we work, the way that we socialize, and it's kind of important to keep track of the fact that as soon as a machine learning predictive model becomes you know, trustworthy, we pretty much stop thinking about it as AI. The reason I like to classify deep learning as a subset is that basically we're all going through the same production processes. And one of the things that I find very funny when my colleagues start freaking out about the use of generative AI and that it's all synthetic, they make it seem like these generative models have somehow, you know, kind of miraculously arrived at sentience by themselves. This is not the case. There's a huge amount of human labor going into these production and to the production of these systems. So this workflow where you begin with raw data, you basically have to clean it. You have to transform this data so that it is processable numerically. And because of this, this is one of those key moments in this transformation where you lose a lot of the complexity of the world and a lot of the bias essentially flattens itself out into your data sets. From there, you split the data set into two parts, one for training, so you will train your model, and then you will test it against a part of your data set and evaluate whether your model is actually working well or not. Once you're happy with the way that it works, you can then begin exporting it so that it works within with data that is essentially going to be coming and interacting with your model once it is in production. So this is the reason I show this is that to kind of explain, you have humans at every single step of this process who are looking at how those algorithms are functioning. We don't necessarily understand what those models are doing when we're dealing, for example, with neural networks, but it is human labor. So when we talk about diversity in machine learning, there is already all of the issues that we talked about in terms of gender, ethnicity, age, social class, sexual orientation, right? So basically, you have all of those social diversity issues, but you have a couple of additional ones. Notably, the fact that most of the technology is essentially coming from the United States right now in machine learning. So most of the big systems are being produced there. Most of the papers that are being referred to are coming from North America, with China and UK leading behind. But basically, we are in a very Anglo-Saxon orientation for our technology, and definitely a global north. So I'm going to give you an example of what happens and why this is actually important. And we're going to look at the ImageNet data set, which was one of the first computer vision data sets that was created in 2009 by Fei Li, if I remember correctly, and Olga Rusakovsky. And these are Stanford professors who realized that, you know, in order to actually build computer vision systems, you need data that has been labeled. And so they start this collective action to build this data set. And they initially hire Stanford grad students who are labeling images. Stanford grad students cost a lot of money. Their time is very precious. And very quickly, they're going to realize, oh, this cannot work. And so they're going to start hiring people through Amazon Mechanical Turk. So Amazon Turk workers are essentially people who are going to be paid by the task. And they're going to be paid by the task of labeling images using what's called the WordNet hierarchy, which was also produced at Stanford. So it's a hierarchy of values, and you assign these to these words. And thinking that this is enough, they basically set about hiring data labelers. And most of these data labelers are essentially going to be coming from developing countries where the wages are so low that it's okay to actually be data labeling for your rent. So you're actually going to be taking a lot of the computer scientists in developing countries who have computers, who have internet access, and who have access to this tool. And instead of doing computer programming, they're going to label images. So what could go wrong? In 2018, there is a research project called Excavating AI that actually goes and analyzes what's going on in the data sets that are being used to train these models. And ImageNet is one of their prime targets. And so one of the things that they do is they go and start looking at the classification of women. So this is an example of the women's human subgroup. And you see that women have incredibly derogatory names that are going to be associated with, because basically one of the things that happens is that the value of the culture is essentially going into the labeling system. And so in certain cultures where women have to be, you know, incredibly covered up, just wearing a sundress essentially is the equivalent of being a prostitute. And so you see these horribly derogatory terms that are going to come into the ImageNet system and essentially going to be trained. So, you know, anyways, it's really quite problematic as a data set. And so because of this, and because of the work that was done for Excavating AI, the researchers who had done ImageNet decided to actually do a research project around the classifications, the human classifications in their own process. So what they did was they took the 2,800 subcategories of the person group, and they basically decided to test whether the images were safe or imageable. In other words, if these categories actually were valid. And they recruited their test subjects exactly the same way that they recruited their labelers through Amazon Turk. So basically, by the time that they were finished with this, so for example, does an image of conversation partner make sense? No, anything could be a conversation partner. So that's not a highly imageable term. And so once they start weeding all of these out, they come down to basically going from 2,832 to only 159 safe and imageable labels. So one of the great things was, thanks to that artistic production, they actually were able to improve ImageNet through scientific methods. So anyways, you'll find the references for this paper if need be. So I'm going to show you some of the other really notable, some of these may be familiar to you if you are working in AI ethics. If not, you might actually, discover something. So hopefully you're discovering something. This is another really seminal piece of research from Joy Buolamwini and Tunit Gabriel called Gender Shades. And what they did was they tested facial recognition systems. This is a paper from 2018. And what they did was they decided to take commercially available facial recognition systems that claimed to identify gender and decided to pass through all of these different images of people with different skin tones. Basically, they used the dermatological skin tone classification. And what they found was that essentially, it really works really well for light-skinned males. And it works okay, like you have about a 7% error rate for light-skinned women. By the time you get to darker skinned males, you're at a 12% error rate. And by the time you get to darker skinned women, you are at a 35% error rate. And on the side, I'm showing you the specific results in the women's category. But you see that the IBM facial recognition system literally has a 48% error rate. It's basically a coin toss. So from this research, they actually created a benchmark data set called the Pilot Parliaments Benchmark. They created a data set using the faces of the representatives in the United Nations. And because here we have national representation from all of these different countries, there is a much better mix of skin tones that are going to be available for the test. And the other good thing is that everyone is photographed in a very similar way. So you have a standardized image. And so this benchmark, this data set has essentially become a benchmark for testing the racial bias of different facial recognition systems. So once again, identifying problems and trying to come up with ways of measuring. This is another really very interesting project. So this is a gender bias in image recognition systems. So this is going to be looking at the labels that are going to be coming up when you actually show portraits. And so what they did here was present pictures of male and female representatives. So these are all elected officials in the United States, and they fed the portraits of all of these elected officials into an image recognition systems. And what they found was that men were being described with labels with rather powerful roles. They were describing things that, generally, suit, speaker, business, public speaking. When the women representatives, who are elected officials, were passed through, you have television presenter, smile, spokesperson, black hair, chin, hairstyle. In other words, the words that are going to be coming up describing the women are descriptive terms, things talking about the way that they look rather than what they're doing. So the reason I'm saying this is that even in the language that we use, bias is essentially going to be embedding themselves into the tools that we are using. Another example here. So this is from the Corpus of Historical American English. They're looking at how language, according to different, have evolved over time. So here we've got adjectives associated with women from 1910, 1960, and 1990. And you're going to be seeing the evolution of attitudes and the evolution of bias in time. You have it with different ethnic groups. So how are Hispanics, Asians, and Caucasians, whites as the Americans call them, being described? And what are the top adjectives associated with Asians in 1910, 1960, and 1990? And once again, you see some very prejudicial terms that are occurring, and that there is an evolution in time in the type of language that we're using. In other words, there is not a single predictive tool that we are using that does not have bias. So, why is this important? Well, the tools that we are using will actually impact our opportunities. This is an example of Google's algorithm that was shown to basically filter out prestigious job ads, particularly for men, and not show them to women. And I probably have about a 2-hour slideshow for the bias horror stories, but we only have 15 minutes left, so I'm going to move on. Okay, so where is bias essentially entering? So I already talked about the problems with this kind of flattening out and bias coming into our data sets. That's not the only place. It's coming into the way that we're building our models. A lot of the choices that we make, algorithmically speaking, are not necessarily being driven by performance reasons. So, well, actually, no, it's frequently performance reasons, but very problematic in terms of sustainability. We have how these predictions actually come out of the model that can be problematic, what's getting filtered out. And then what do we do once we have these predictions? What is the actual way that we're going to be exploiting them and impacting society? And the last one, which I would say is actually the most important one, is who is defining the problems that we're going to be working on? Okay, so if we talk about bias, we have to talk about it through the entire workflow, not just while we're making our tools, but also who is around the table defining what problems merit our attention. So now I'm going to make a shift to talk about LLMs, large language models, generative AI, and to really talk about sustainability problems. When I talked about these choices that we're making in the way that we build our predictive models, there is a huge sustainability issue with the LLMs, and so we're going to look a little bit as to what's going on in this particular world. And one of the things that we're noticing is that the technology is advancing, it's automating itself, it's getting into our workforces, it's getting into the way that we socialize, and there's very little critical discourse about what this costs, not just to us, but to the environment. And so ever since generative AI came out, I get about one request a week to do this kind of presentation where I need to go and reassure designers that they're still going to have a job in a few years. And so I have a talk that I present, to basically explain what's going on in the technological world. And so essentially what we're seeing, pretty much like in all disciplines, there's an evolution in our tools. First, we go from the manual to the digitization, and a lot of these transformations already occurred in the late 20th century. But now we're hitting automation, and it's going into different parts of our working processes. Okay. So we have them everywhere, including obviously in data visualization. We're using LLMs now a lot. or no? Okay. So we're using LLMs in data visualization to help us treat data, formalize it. Basically, we're using it as an automation tool instead of using R or whatever platform you particularly enjoy using. The question we need to ask is generative AI just another evolution? Is it just one more little blip? And I would say, well, yeah, in certain ways it is, if we're just looking at it as just the evolution of our tools. But we do need to ask ourselves, is this endless progress actually possible? And so one of the great things is AI is occurring at a moment in time that is essentially considered the fourth industrial revolution, which basically means we can look at 3 other industrial revolutions to understand what essentially happened. And one of the things we find that there is definitely an overestimation of the immediate impact, but frequently an underestimation of long-term impacts. So we need to ask ourselves the question about the energy consumption, the ecological impact, and its impact on global warming, specifically in regards to generative AI. We also have to look at its economic models, what happens to intellectual property, data sovereignty, and copyright issues. We have to talk about the creation, the modification, the destruction of designer jobs in AI, because it will destroy jobs, definitely. But it actually poses the question of which skills and expertise do we actually want to retain and delegate? Because part of this is, especially with the generative images, it's really affecting a lot of designers who are doing work that they consider pleasurable. It's not the drudge work. Creating the image is not the thing that they want to automate. And because this is essentially being automated, it basically means that they can be easily cut out of a lot of production cycles. And that is where the job destruction is actually occurring. But then again, it's happening in computer science and programming as well. So I also have a bit of research on that end. And then ultimately, how does this actually impact what we teach, what people learn, and how does this also affect equal opportunities for everyone? So if we look at technological sustainability, one of the things that we notice is that there has been very, very little discussion about the energy consumption of data centers. And you know, they basically, so this is the data centers just in the US, it's not calculating what's going on in Europe or anywhere else. And already in the US, they are using more energy than pretty much every single country except 16, which obviously includes the US and China. What's kind of interesting is that there has never been a discussion about this enormous energy consumption of data centers. Nobody discusses it. It's not in the news. The question we can ask ourselves is why. And the graphic on the right is essentially the expected changes in energy consumption in Ohio. So this is the Ohio Utility Agency that is trying to calculate what's going to happen with the boom generative AI that is essentially coming. So before we can do that, I'm going to very quickly explain neural networks. So they are constructions that are a lot more computationally intensive than for example, regression or more traditional machine learning. They create models that are so complex that we do not know how they actually come up with their predictions, and it creates a tremendous, it requires a tremendous amount of energy. So the first one was in 1956, and I realized I really do need to go faster. Take my time, okay. we started early, so okay. Basically what we're seeing is that there's going to be basically construction of more and more complex models that occur over time. So the image on the right was done in 2016. At that point, GANs had come into existence, but transformers had not. In generative AI, there are 2 real key pivotal moments. The first one is the production of what's called generative adversarial networks. This is going to be used primarily for the construction of images. The first paper comes out in 2014. It was originally designed specifically to try to address the issue of data labeling, and by using automated systems of creating data specifically for creating data sets. But very quickly, so the image that we're seeing on the bottom is from 2019, a theoretical project by NVIDIA called "This Person Does Not Exist," shows that by the time you get to 5 years of development, we are able to do photorealistic images of humans that are practically indistinguishable. Sometimes the pupil's a little bit off. But aside from that, we see that we are able to generate synthetic images very, very successfully, and this very early on. The other key pivotal moment are transformers, which basically was able to resolve the problems of natural language processing, which is about dealing with sequential data. So language is really something that obviously occurs through sequences, and there were a huge amount of problems trying to get good results. So bizarrely enough, we are able to generate images before we are able to create really convincing text. So the first paper called Attention, I think Attention's all you need, I can't actually read it from here, came out in 2017, and by the time we get to 2019, we see our first serious predictive models. A lot of these early models remain in-house. They were very afraid of releasing these models because they were afraid that they were going to be used for producing malevolent texts. It's OpenAI that basically burst the doors open in 2022. So after OpenAI released ChatGPT, what essentially happened? Well, one of the things that happened was that this gold rush towards large language model processing. So NVIDIA last year actually sold more chips than energy that's available for running them simultaneously. They made, huge, I think $3 billion in profits. And here's the problem. Basically, each GPU consumes around 600 watts of power, and 3.5 million are expected to be sold in the coming year. So more. Why? What could go wrong? Okay, so I decided to do a little bit of math and figure out exactly how much energy is being consumed. So because this is kind of like an ugly secret, one of the things, it's actually very difficult to find anybody who actually explains how much energy is actually being consumed. So using several bases, including the fact that basically, so we know that the number of parameters, we know it costs $12 million. There was an article that talked about 10,000 V100 NVIDIA GPUs, and that tried to come up with a conservative calculation. And their conservative calculation, based on 10,000 CPUs doing I can't read what I'm supposed to be doing here. Sorry. So basically, 10,000 GPUs running for 13 days with the number of watts basically is 936 megawatts of energy consumed by the GPUs alone. So I tried to compare, what does this mean in terms of energy consumption? I tried with Americans, they use way too much energy. I live in France, and what this is about is the annual consumption of 200 French households. You could think, hey, that's not necessarily that bad. But what you have to take into consideration is GPT-3 is a small model. It is, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it is down here. Yes, you see it. So yeah, so the models now are way bigger, and they become exponentially more energy hungry. Okay. And that when I give that number, the only thing I'm talking about is this stage here. I'm not talking about getting the data. I'm not talking about cleaning it. I'm not talking about keeping the model running. I'm not talking about inference, the actual use and deployment of these models. Okay, so there is a huge amount of money that is essentially being sunk into this domain. And there is a lot of people, including people like Cory Doctorow, who are saying we're actually in the middle of a bubble, and that, like all bubbles, they may actually, explode. If they explode, what happens? Well, basically, if the model cannot actually be exploited, it will actually go offline. However, the good thing is that there could still be some real value created behind it. And so I actually end with a cheerier talk. But essentially what we're seeing, so this is the Power Grab series from the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, that talks about all of the problems that are essentially occurring in the United States regarding their energy grid. They do not have enough energy, and because of this, they're putting coal power stations back online. They're looking at building atomic power stations specifically for running and maintaining data centers. Microsoft purchased all of the energy production of the largest nuclear power source starting in 2028. Which basically means that there's going to be a battle for this energy in the United States, who has the right to it and who does not. There's also limits there. Who is going to pay for the upgrading of these systems? Anyways, huge amount of problems. We already talked about that one. Another element that came out, for example, what does it actually mean to be using ChatGPT for making a 100-word email? We see that it consumes about 519 millimeters of water. And then when you start compounding it, what does it actually mean? So I do recommend that you go and track this article down. It's called a bottle of water per email, the hidden environmental costs of using AI chatbots. And they have got really very good data graphics. Same thing, how many light bulbs can you power, and what does it actually mean when you start compounding it with percentages of a nation? And also comparing it to other industries like the meat production industry. How are we doing on time? Do you want me to continue on this? Or should we go to questions pretty soon? Okay, I'll try to wrap it up in 10 minutes then. Okay, so obviously we already see that there's problems with intellectual property. A lot of this is being played out in the courts. One of the things that's really problematic about all of these models being in the United States is that most of the jurisdictions are essentially going to be determined by the United States, which has what's called fair use rule in terms of anything that is publicly available on the internet essentially is fair game for being used to train these models. There are court cases going on between illustrators who are suing Stability AI. Stability AI is one of the good actors who does open source development, so you can actually see the models. And because of this, they are the easiest ones, obviously, to drag to court because you can actually prove what they've been doing. Midjourney, etc., much more difficult. So here, for example, when you're a creator using these tools, it also affects what you can actually protect in terms of your intellectual property. You have, for example, this famous case of an author that had tried to copyright protect a comic book. And they originally granted the copyright protection, but when they realized that all of the images were generated by Midjourney, they actually reversed their ruling, said that the only thing from the book that could be protected was the text because the images were not controlled by a human. Once again, the question is, where is the human in the AI? But anyways. But one of the things that's very, very interesting is how this is actually beginning to affect the way models are being made. Because as I mentioned, a lot of these early technological developments was really about creating synthetic data to make it easier to train our machine learning predictive models. And one of the things that they're finding is that AI models actually collapse when trained recursively on generated data. In other words, if they use only the information that they themselves generate within 10 iterations of development, basically they become really terrible. Like images will cease to have details. So it basically loses the complexity that human weirdness essentially can bring to the table. And so bizarrely enough, you now have people like journalists who are going to be working for GAFAMs producing good human content, human unpredictable content that essentially is going to be used to try to keep these models at good levels of performance. And so that they're also striking deals. So part of the court cases that are going on is also to try to resolve issues of licensing. So the big Getty Images, etc., is not protecting the photographers. They just want to get a cut of the budget. And here, this is an example of a journalist explaining how basically his job now is to essentially write text to train chatbots. But so once again, we do have to ask ourselves, though, in the creation of these models, who is actually dictating what jobs get automated and which ones disappear? Because there's definite labor creation. It's just not necessarily where we would necessarily want it. So data labeler, definite creation. People who are going to moderate these things also cannot be automated. And these are not highly desirable jobs, especially the people who do the moderation. They frequently are paid terrible wages and come out of this experience needing therapy because they really see kind of the worst of the worst. But we're going to have to see AI experts in judicial in the judicial systems. The AI Act is essentially going to be creating definitely new disciplines for people who are going to be able to evaluate these tools, who are going to be able to litigate these tools. And so that we should see definite evolutions in the way that it's going to happen. Bubble economics. So once again, all of the GAFAMs are essentially sustaining these development models primarily through advertising. They're making so much money on the side from advertising that they are essentially funding this research at a loss. Even OpenAI does not have the funds coming in to be able to sustain themselves. And so the question is, if the money runs out, what happens? And the other thing is, as soon as things become really, really stable and we can expect their performances to be good, their models evolve towards subscription models. So the question is that who is going to have access to these tools once the free beta tests actually begin running out? So I realize we're heading towards a very depressing kind of like. Rah. So I did want to show, hey, if that bubble actually does burst, what good could come out of this? And so I wanted to show some of the projects that we have been working on, or what we're researching, at least at our school. So looking at frugality and reliability. Retrieval augmented generation, RAG, using RAG with small language models. So using models that have good performances and that you're going to be using with your own data is actually one of the new development strategies that a lot of companies are going to be using. And these small language models can actually run on local networks. They exist, they're there. And even if those companies, because a lot of them are open source, basically, even if OpenAI fails, we still have those small language models. So that's one of the kind of like the silver linings for all of this. So we actually did a comparison of different approaches, including the continuation of fine tuning, and we found that RAG basically gives much better performance and allows for our students to actually use language models that we can actually have running on our servers in-house. So much less energy consumption. If you want to try, there's something called Notebook LM. If you do not know what RAG is, which is a Google version that allows you to basically experiment with this approach. You basically bring in your PDFs or whatever source material you want, and then you actually have the LLM that can give you much more specialized and precise ideas about what you can do with this information. It even has one where you can create a podcast automatically. It's quite disturbing. I imagine podcasters are like, freaking out totally. Other things that we can do. There's some interesting shifting human interaction paradigms for those of you working with human-computer interaction. Voice user interfaces are essentially becoming much easier to use. And we're seeing that this can actually be really beneficial for things like inclusive design. So this is an example of a project that we're working on. I'm trying to get the funding for a PhD for one of my students. It's basically trying to bring weather data to farmers in Benin who have really, if they have smartphones, they're really basic ones. And so what we need to do is how can we take really precise information and send it to people who do not know how to read, because we're dealing with like about a 43% literacy rate, and and on top of it all, there's about 100 different dialects. So here they're doing. So the idea here is to use technology that can actually take text-based information, transform them to voice, and then essentially send them out automatically through voicemail systems. So essentially, they would get messages on their smartphones, not smartphones, on their basic phones. This teamed up with a second project that's actually a research project that's going on in Benin right now. That's being sponsored by the government, where people can train the voice recognition systems on the local dialects. And so they're looking for volunteers to essentially do this kind of training. And we are talking population of 14 million with 54 different dialects. So it's really quite challenging. This is an example of a software called Wizard, UIZARD. And you can actually create your own website simply by writing a very precise prompt. So yeah, UX, UI designers are not exempt from any of this automation. Here, this is another example. This is a prototyping tool called VoiceFlow that actually allows you to create working chatbots very easily by designing either text-based or voice-based interactions. Wonderful things going on for research. Obviously, a lot of highly specialized research tools that are going to be trained specifically on scientific papers. So I have this list. You're welcome to write to me to get this, but you can find it also on the Georgetown Library website. So and it describes everything in terms of whether they're free and what they're actually being trained on. Wonderful work being done for UX research through softwares like Dovetail and Condense, where you can take recordings for any of your field work and it transcribes them in just faultless. It's mind-blowing. And from there, you can go and generate things like journey maps, user scenarios, and things like that. So and they're generally pretty kind with students, so take advantage of this if you have access to it. And obviously, this also leads us to potentially new disciplines, because perhaps what we need to do is actually have professional diversity around the table for the people who are making our tools. And so one of the research directions that we're going in is looking at how we can build interdisciplinary teams with UX designers, data scientists, and then programmers to basically begin conceiving models through a more distant orientation, really thinking about use cases and potentially how things can actually go wrong too. So, I will end there.
Thank you very much, Frédérique. Thank you very much, Frédérique, for this amazing presentation. Very inspiring. I think you touched upon different aspects of sustainability. It was really nice. So now we have questions, right?
Okay.
So let me see on Discord. If you haven't sent questions yet, please do, people remotely. But you can also raise your hand. Okay, we have one person there.
Yeah.
We also have a question on Discord, but yeah, let's.
Yeah. I'll be on Discord later, so if you have other things you want to ask me, or I'll put links to my stuff if I.
So, Frédérique, thank you very much for your presentation. Fantastic topics. We have some research groups here in Centro de Informática dealing with generative AI, and we have a discipline of computational creativity that we start with computational creativity and then transform to generative AI. And the things that it's important for us in the global South, I would like to explore this idea of all those models, all those things are doing in the global North.
Yeah.
And the specificities of the language and all the data sets and the corpus of this. What's your vision about how can we adapt, or how can we use, or what are the actions that we as Global South should do to address this kind of disparity? And I'm quite worried about the access.
Yeah.
Here, you mentioned there's more language models there, but what are your perspectives on this disparity between North and South?
The disparity in terms of access is definitely one that that's kind of really critical. I mean, one of the things that I mean, technically, I'm from France. We're part of the North, you know, but we're not part of the Anglo-Saxon world. And one of the things we found, for example, is that it took a while for some of those LLMs to actually become available to us. And I can only imagine what that must mean for countries that are deemed not to have a user base that's rich enough to essentially pay for the monthly subscriptions. Those are going to become low priorities for those companies, most likely. So the thing is that what can the Global South do? First of all, I would say focus on when I was talking about RAG and this approach specifically for language, the idea that we need, I mean, we, the global we South, we need to start thinking about what information is being trained on. So I had shown that image initially that showed where the images for ImageNet were coming from, and it was primarily the United States. But that basically means that the visual information that we're getting in terms of what a bride looks like is essentially going to be very much about North American marriages. So an Indian marriage and an Indian costume or traditional is not going to appear. The South American marriage, you know, if there's specifics to that, may not appear as well. So it's already asking yourselves who has trained this model, because one of the keys that's essentially happening is people are taking models that have already been calculated and they're continuing the development with new data sets. But that initial development stage is not totally neutral either. So how much do you know about that model, what it's been trained on, who's done it, what biases could be available and or could be kind of embedded in there, and actually having this kind of critical view of whatever you're using to ask yourself, you know, what's essentially coming through in terms of values, because values will be coming through. It is never neutral. So what can you do? I would actually, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what niche you're developing, but really think about what has gone into training your model and whether you can take something that is already existing and continue to evolve it in a way that makes sense.
Nice. We have a lot to talk. Yeah.
I'm here all week, so by all means.
Hello, hello. So we have a question on Discord from Brisher Herman. So the question is, what do you think we can do as individuals or small organizations to build or spread awareness of the sustainability concerns of big tech and data center energy consumption? To the point of this seminar, this seems like a great opportunity for visualization for communication. But where do we get from the data to visualize the impacts of these closed source systems?
Okay, I talked about the energy consumption of the LLMs very specifically, but when I showed that okay, yeah. Yes, it actually seems like a great opportunity for visualization, but I'm going to go back to that image for a second, the one that is here. Up. No, up. That one. That curve that goes up didn't start going up because of machine learning. It actually started going up because of streaming, because of cloud computing, because of Bitcoins, because everyone found a reason to embrace this particular system. It's a lot more convenient for people to not have to worry about their data. We have been doing technological development without ever asking ourselves what is the cost of this shift. And so back when I was your age, for the most of the people in this room, you only had software that had to run on your machine. You basically were responsible for the data. You made sure you had like 3 backups of everything, and if you lost your hard drive, you probably lost a few days of work. If your phone died, you lost all of your images. So cloud computing it became something that was great for us because we no longer have to worry about it. My phone dies or gets stolen, all of my information is safe somewhere. It's somebody else's responsibility for backing it up, and it costs me technically maybe a few dollars a month for this kind of service. But at the same time, you have software developers who are developing their software that has an economic model that pretty much takes all of their users hostage. So for example, Adobe. Adobe used to only make money when they would upgrade their software. So they had a real pressure to essentially, come up with frequent upgrades and desirable upgrades that would push people to basically buy a new license. And then people might, live off of it for a few years. Now you have to pay by the month. They have never made more money, and they laid off 75% of their development staff. Okay, so I can tell you that, and it's about 1 million times more energy hungry than running the thing off of your computer. Because you're basically transporting it. It could be a good thing if you kept your old terrible computer as long as possible and used the capabilities of these data centers, but most of us are not like that. We will upgrade our computer every 2 or 3 years, right? So the question is, when we're making all of these choices in terms of how technology develops, we do need to ask ourselves where that cost is essentially being born. And it's really being born in terms of the energy usage and what it's going to do to the climate if we don't actually ever ask ourselves this question. So yes, please, by all means, we definitely need more data visualizations like this. And so I do recommend going and looking at those articles in the Washington Post because they all treat different aspects. And once you begin to understand how those things work together, it really becomes a huge, huge problem. And it's not just the LLMs. I mean, the LLMs is kind of all of the GPUs that are being purchased, and there's a real race to control those GPUs. It's going to create an explosive demand for energy. Right now, we don't actually have it. That's kind of what the interesting point. The energy is not there. So without really significant investments, and somebody's going to have to pay for that. So the question is, where's that money going to come from? Okay. But yes, by all means, make visualizations.
Hi, thank you for the talk. It was really interesting to see actually the whole arc, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just about sustainability; it's about biosustainability and
Yeah.
everything between. So I wanted I want your comment on the last slide. So you brought, like, I like the examples you brought us on the end as ways forward. Like you said, this is what you're working on currently, right? In a way. I don't know. Maybe I understood wrongly, but I still see them as somehow building on on a business as usual way. Like we're still gonna continue working with ML, like without stopping. Really.
I how to put it this way? Yes, we are in a bubble. We are in a bubble where right now the financing is coming from sources such as advertising that is allowing us to take advantage of a lot of these tools without necessarily asking ourselves hard questions. Realistically speaking, if OpenAI runs out of money and ChatGPT goes offline, you're not going to be able to run it locally. You basically really have to have a tremendous amount of money to be able to finance this system. And so realistically speaking, once the industry dies, like the bubble bursts, what's left? Well, there are those small language models that exist that are available that can run off of this machine. That could become a fodder for a new type of development. So that's kind of what I'm saying. The reality of the small language models and the RAG also means they're not going to be as good as ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT. I'll be honest with you. I had a European project that was due. I had 19 partners that I had to condense down to 2 pages. I did not have time to do it. I fed it all in. I explained exactly what I needed to be. I mean, the prompt was probably longer than what I got out in the end, but it saved me easily 2 weeks of work. Okay. So in that case, I do not feel guilty having used it for that. I wasn't, trying to see what my partner looks like if he wore a Smurf or, the question is that yes, ultimately, I'll be honest, I'm not perfect. But if ChatGPT weren't there, I would probably be working really hard to try to make really good small language models run locally. And I'll say that one of the things that we did, so my first PhD student actually had his dissertation last week. And one of the tests that he did was look at code generation between ChatGPT, Code Python from Llama, which is actually a relatively small model that has been specially trained to produce code for computer programmers. And the third one was Mistral, which was an even smaller model. The Llama 3 and Mistral were the 7 billion parameter models. And what we found was that programmers actually preferred the Code Python Llama 3 version over ChatGPT. And there's a huge difference in terms of energy consumption for that. So realistically speaking, if we start building much more precise, frugal models, it is a different mindset. If we're doing something that can run off of your machine, that you don't have to go over the system, that could definitely be a big plus too. So I know I understand we're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, but
Okay. I have more, but I'll bring it in the back. Do we have time, Liz? No? I can talk later. I can
yeah, well,
I can catch you later, Frédérique.
Okay.
Sorry, we're
the ones that are on Discord I can actually get to afterwards. So
yes,
worst case scenario, but
that's what
yeah
was okay. And also, Frédérique is going to stay the whole week here, so feel free to reach her out, right, and talk to her.
Yeah.
So.
And the reason that I came and because everyone was like, "Oh my God, you're flying across the world." Yeah, I do that because it's very different to actually come and meet people in person and have the time to talk and go and visit things and you do not build relationships doing research by just doing a talk online and then it's like the coffee afterwards. It's going and visiting somebody's lab. So by all means, I'm actually here to meet other researchers and meet people and meet projects and try to find cool stuff to do. So come find me.
Thank you again, Frédérique. Thank you all.
And my email's there. It's so
Cool.
don't hesitate to reach out.
Just a quick announcement. We're gonna have another link for the YouTube broadcast for the other keynotes. This one was the opening session plus the first keynote. So please check on Discord the right link. So thank you all. We'll come back at 2 p.m. Bye bye, guys.